Good afternoon and welcome. My name's Rudy Page and welcome to Windrush Generations Matter, Get the Facts. Today I'm with David Levy, a member of the Home Office Windrush HEALP team, and his area of specialism is outreach. So we're going to have a dialogue today. Just focus on the facts of the Windrush scheme. Good morning, David. Yes, I think it's still morning. How are you?
Morning, Rudy. Well, thank you very much, and thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm okay. Thank you for the platform. Thank you for the opportunity to allowing me to have a conversation.
Great, great. Maybe if you can turn the volume up slightly. I don't know if it's possible.
I think sadly on these devices, my volume button's set quite, I'll try. Is
okay.
Any better?
That's a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So David, can you just give us an overview of the Windrush scheme? And just before that, your kind of role, just, I mean, in general terms. I know we will go into depth about what you actually do, but just in general.
Yeah. Well, yeah. As an overview of the scheme, I mean, most people will hopefully know by now that the Windrush scandal came about. It broke first in April 2018. This was when the long-term effects on people who were settled in the UK and have been here for decades found themselves in a position of being subject to what is now called the compliance environment, but in them days, previously in 2018, it was known as the hostile environment, on the basis of their inability to demonstrate their legal status. This was because documentation which they did not possess was now used as a basis to disqualify them from a myriad of social benefits. So people were unable to access housing, they were unable to access healthcare, they were denied jobs because they could not demonstrate their legal status. The issue of the Windrush scandal was because a lot of people, this was not their fault. They have come, they have settled in the country, had arrived as a country, and situations in terms of immigration rules changed, and a lot of people did not know of the change. And then this was compounded by the fact that the government then introduced what's called a compliant environment to try and deter people who did not have legal status from having access to benefits. However, the issue was a lot of people in the Windrush scandal didn't have a legal basis, but they were here legally. And the scandals come about because those people were classed as the same as people who generally were not meant to be here or had overstayed. As a result of that, when the scandal broke, the government then recognizing the issue, recognizing its error, because it was a governmental error, I'm not getting away from that, not shying from that. The then Prime Minister Theresa May, the then Home Secretary Amber Rudd, acknowledged and apologised for that, and subsequent Prime Ministers and Home Secretaries have continued the apology because we recognise it's a governmental issue, governmental error. In recognition of that, what the government has done is set up what's called the Windrush HEALP team. When it first set up, it was called a task force, and that has been set up to try and support people who have been impacted by the whole series of measures which were called the hostile environment, or now we call them compliant environment. What we do now in terms of the Windrush HEALP team, in terms of trying to help people get the documentation to verify and confirm their status, so they are no longer subject to the compliant measures which people who shouldn't be here are subject to. That is a general overall scheme. There is also another scheme which I won't touch on very much, which is a compensation scheme, because the compensation scheme recognises the real damage which has been delivered to a lot of individuals. And so what it tries to do is provide financial monies to people in recognition of their situations they've suffered. I have to keep on stressing this. I will stress this continually. We're not saying that compensation will ever make up for the loss and the injuries people have suffered. It just will not, and it cannot, and it will not. But it's at least something which the government can do to try and help alleviate people's situations. But that's just the compensation scheme. But our main purpose here is to highlight in terms of outreach, in terms of status, in order to help people initially get confirmation of documents and surety of their legal status and their lawful status in the country. And that's what I do generally in outreach. I basically go around and speak to people and try and raise their awareness of what the actual scheme is about. I try to debunk a lot of myths and try to just let people know what actually the Home Office is trying to do in terms of support on the Windrush.
So who is actually eligible to apply to the scheme?
Yeah, eligibility is generally for, and I would always advise that anybody from the Commonwealth who was settled in the UK before 1973 is able to apply for support. And also anybody from any country who was settled before 1988. This is one of the myths, and this is one of the miscommunications which we try to straighten out. People assume because it's called Windrush, the Windrush scheme, the Windrush help team, everything to do with Windrush scandal, it's only applicable to people from the Caribbean or wider the Commonwealth. The problem, it wasn't a problem, but the name stuck when the media broke it. They looked at it at the arrival and they said it basically started from the arrival of the Empire Windrush in Tilbury Docks, and the government chose to run with that name.
Okay.
Consequence of that, a number or large sections of the population think it doesn't apply to them because they are not from the Caribbean or from a Commonwealth. That is not the case. The Windrush scheme is applicable to anybody who was here before 1988 and was settled before 1988 if they have encountered difficulties demonstrating their lawful status.
Okay. Yeah, that's quite a complicated message to get across now, I guess. So that's why you have to keep reminding everybody.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, there are common misconceptions that this is one of them, but it's no longer applicable. It's not applicable to somebody from Brazil because they're not from the Commonwealth or the Caribbean or whatever. And the bottom line is all the written literature which the Home Office has around this always states the actual criteria, which means it's everybody. However, the populace at whole, the current information, because it's encapsulated in Empire Windrush, etc., people make that assumption. That's not the case. It is open to everybody, anybody who was here before, who settled before 1988 and have encountered problems with their status.
Okay. So how does a person apply to the scheme?
There's a number of ways. I mean, I would initially tell people to contact the Windrush help team. We have a call centre where we have dedicated Home Office Windrush trained staff, I have to hasten to add, who will provide that first level of support and assistance to individuals. The reason why I state quite clearly that they're Windrush trained staff is because when the whole scandal broke, the team set up at pace. It was set up very quickly. Mm-hmm. one of the things which undermined and still characterizes a team of call handlers is the fact they have to have the right attitude. They have to have and demonstrate to people who call up. Because when the scandal first broke, there was confusion, there was upset, there was anger, there's a whole range of emotions and a whole gamut of feelings. People would ring up confused, people would ring in angry, people would ring in just wanting some sort of support and clarification.
Yeah. So what you're saying now then, that if somebody rings the helpline, which you'll give after this, of course, they're going to get the information, advice and guidance that they need.
Yes. Essentially, first and foremost, though, the call handlers will be in the right frame of mind to actually provide support, because we have to be able to speak and make the person feel comfortable, feel assured that they are dealing with somebody who has sympathy. One of the issues of their Home Office has been that it's being accused of viewing people as numbers.
Yeah. So what you're saying is then that first contact then, and I guess people will evidence it for themselves, that they will be treated with compassion.
Yes, yes.
You know, that's compassion and humanity in terms of once you've got to deal with the state institutions, that's what I guess the public are looking for, aren't they?
Yes, that is the issue which we always have, and that is the issue which we've been undermines us is from the very get-go. It underpins us from the very get-go is the fact we have to be the face of a department which acknowledges the issues which have been created by us, and as a consequence demonstrates our sincerity of approach in trying to help people.
Yeah.
Once people have made the contact, just go back to your point, Rudy, we will be, the call handlers will be providing factual information based on what people, the queries of a person is. So initially the call handlers will, if somebody wants to make a claim, will provide the documentation, which is all free of charge. The whole scheme, should I say, is free of charge. They will provide the documentation to people and tell them overview of how the process works. One of the things we stress throughout is that there is no enforcement action. Because again, this is another myth I have to debunk, is the fact that people assume or people have reticence coming forward because they think that some underhand way of the Home Office trying to trap people and then deport people. That does not happen. The Prime Minister, the Home Secretaries have made it clear that it does not happen. We have what's called a firewall in the department, which means any information being brought to the Home Office via Windrush stays within Windrush. It doesn't go to anywhere else. It can't go anywhere else. And that is something which has to be stated and stated continuously, because we have to try and build people's trust back in the department. And that's one of the key areas where people struggle in terms of the trust.
Trust and confidence is essential. Yeah. So do you want to give the helpline number at this point?
Yeah. Our free phone, it's a free phone number, as I said before, everything's free on this. I'll read this number because I don't want to get it wrong. It's 080-800 678 1925. That's 0800 678 1925. Or people can apply online, or people can go online to our website, and that is the search gov.uk/Windrush help team. That's all one word. If people access that, they will be able to get all the information in relation to Windrush, and that will be able to, they can start the claims from there if they want to. So it'll have the details of application forms and processes, etc. So if people don't want to talk, if they want to apply on that, and if they just want to get the forms from the website, they can visit the website, or they can ring up on the free phone helpline. And my advice would be to ring up on the free phone helpline initially, simply because people will be able to have conversations. And a lot of the time, it's about making that conversation initially with people so people can not only get the facts, but also get the reassurance. And the reassurance has to be paramount. The facts will follow, but it's the reassurance and the confidence which people need to be assured of.
Yeah. So really key to this then, as you say that, is the trust, the confidence and assurance.
Yes, definitely.
So that's good. Right, we know it has, this Windrush scandal has impacted across the demographics in terms of communities. So, and we know particularly around our elderly, community. So what happens if they can't find the right paperwork to prove their right to remain in the UK? Or worse still, what if they don't know or understand the type of paperwork that is needed from them? Because obviously, if you've got into your 60s and 70s and you have to look back 50 years of life here in the UK.
Well, I always do it this way. Again, this is another one of the myths that if you haven't got the paperwork, you can't apply. I always answer it this way. I am middle-aged, should I say. I now live back in my hometown in Sheffield. I used to live in London. Came to Sheffield in 2000. If somebody said to me, David, can you show me proof of your previous addresses in London of 20 years ago? I'd say, no, I don't have that paperwork. It's 20 years ago. If I can't have paperwork from 20 years ago,
exactly.
What is the expectation of somebody having documentation from 40 years ago, 50 years ago?
Exactly.
The department recognises the fact that people may not have the documentation. We ask if people have documentation provided, but that will not stop an application being processed.
Right.
To be sensible and realistic. Ask me for my graduation certificate from 20 odd years ago. I don't have them.
And evidence of the primary school that you went to?
Yeah, nothing, and I'm talking about 25 years ago I went to education, not 40 odd years ago when I went to primary school. Wow. We have to, and this is one of the things I always try and stress as well. If people aren't sure in terms of documentation, don't let that stop you.
Yeah.
Please contact us on the number, have the conversations, because at the end of the day, the department will work with people.
Yeah. One
of the things which has characterized Caribbean and Commonwealth people when they first came across, and a lot of people when they first came across, is their work ethic. As I know from my parents, when they came here, the jobs they did, they came to work and help build the country up. And on the basis of that, they then got what's called national insurance numbers.
Yeah.
So most people will have national insurance numbers. With that one national insurance number, the department from our side can then start searching, because we will then liaise with other government departments. We can contact the tax office, HMRC, we can contact pensions, we can do things with information. So please, I have to stress this so many times, I will always stress this, do not be off-put. If in doubt, make the call. If in doubt, still submit. Because once you make the contact, our caseworkers will work with a person to try and put together what we call the residential footprint to demonstrate their stay.
Right. Okay. And that's pretty clear. So, are there any costs involved in terms of applying?
None at all. As I said, as part of the fact that the government has acknowledged that this come about because of government actions, the government has apologised, and then part of the apology is to rectify it, and by doing that, the whole process is free of charge. It would not make sense to say we've made the mistake, but we are charging you to rectify that mistake. So there are no fees involved at all. This can lead all the way up to citizenship, where people can get citizenship, and then once they've got citizenship, they are then as everybody else. The only fee which is involved is in the cost of a passport, because nobody has a passport which is free. Everybody has to pay for passports. British citizens have to pay for passports. That's the only fee, but that's for a British passport. But people don't have to have a British passport if they don't want to. But citizenship itself under the scheme does not cost. So there are no fees.
Right. Okay. Right. So we're in a COVID-19 and post-COVID, pandemic era. So what impact has this had on people who have made applications?
From our point of view, we have maintained an operational presence all the time. Yes, we've been impacted in the sense that we're not physically in our offices, or our presence has been reduced because of COVID, but we still have the presence. And that's why I say our phone lines are still operational. Applications will still be accepted and they still will be processed. We're still conducting processing of applications. It's not business as usual because of obviously the restrictions in terms of travel, but it's as near as damage to business as usual.
Yeah. Okay.
Again, people shouldn't think that because of COVID, applications will not get processed. They will get processed.
Right.
Processed.
So in your experience as an outreach worker and the conversations, the dialogues you've had with the affected communities all over the country, why do you think we're still down on the amount of people coming forward? And can you just give us some thoughts in terms of, how you've gone about and when you've been able to speak to communities, what that impact has been? And another aspect to that I'm interested to hear from you is that at the end of the day, in terms of representation, our communities have to get involved. The public need to get involved in the scheme to help those, even if it's not for themselves, but others. So if you could just give me an overview of a couple of points around that.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things, like I say, which stops people or makes people hesitant is the number of misconceptions which are about. One of the things that this scheme has a ulterior motive to remove people, and if you make yourself aware or present yourself to the Home Office, you will be put into the back of a van and on a plane flight back to a different country. That under Windrush does not happen. I say it doesn't happen, and it's a fact it doesn't happen, but I want to go further than that. I've been doing outreach since the Windrush scandal first broke in 2018, in April 2018. My outreach role takes me up and down the country. I've been to possibly over 100 different events up and down the country over the last 2 years, over the last 26 months. In all that time and all the people I've been privileged to meet, I have never, ever heard of one person being deported or having enforcement action taken against them as a result of Windrush.
Okay.
It does not happen. And the reason why I say I'd go further than that is that if it did happen, I wouldn't be in this job.
Yeah, so what you're saying, just to be clear then, all of the outreach activities that you've been involved in across the country, the people that you've met, the members of the public who've come to you and shared their story and their predicament with you, nobody, as a result of that engagement with yourself, has had a problem afterwards.
The bottom line is, through Windrush, our involvement, nobody has enforcement action.
Yeah.
Not happen.
Yeah, that's
It would be morally wrong if that happened, because we're asking people to come forward on the basis of trust in the first place because of the issues which we as the Home Office have created. If you use that as a duplicitous way of actually getting people and then deporting them, it's morally not right, and I wouldn't be doing it. So again, that's, like I say, that's one of the main issues. That's one of the concerns we have. That's one of the misconceptions. That's one of the things that stops people coming forward. And that's what I always try and stress, is a sense that people have that assurance through a safe space to come and talk to us. Again, another one is the misconception that because it's titled Windrush, it's not applicable for them. I've spoken to a number of Commonwealth people. I've spoken to people from Nigeria, from Kenya, who said, "Oh, I'm glad I've spoken to you because I didn't think it would apply to us."
Yeah.
No, it applies to everybody who came before who was settled before 1988.
Yeah. Yeah.
The name itself, we understand why the name's been chosen, but there's a misconception which is developed because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Getting information through all the different channels to the public is always a challenge anyway. Yeah.
And another, just to touch on that point in terms of why we haven't, one of the challenges, certainly for me, is the amount of engagement we can have. My outreach work, my outreach team, we are about, as I said before, meeting people, providing the support and the guidance to help people obtain documentation to demonstrate status. We've been doing this for 26 months, and we work with stakeholders who provide that initial link to the community for us. Because as I said, the reputation of the Home Office is not good. People fear, people mistrust, people do not like the Home Office based on what the Home Office has done. Understandably, that's a position which I understand because that's happened. We have to then, our remit is about building bridges, building trust so we can offer that support and that service. As I said, we work with stakeholders because they are the people, they are the trusted people in communities who will advocate for us. I mentioned a couple here. There's one called the Windrush National Organisation, and there's another called RAFA, which is the social action arm of one of the big Pentecostal churches in the United Kingdom, Church of God of Prophecy. These bodies have supported us from the very early days, and they continue to do so. It is with their support which we can deliver what we do. Without their support and other groups like this, we would not be able to go to places because people would understandably not welcome us and they would not trust us. But these bodies advocate for us, and they basically say, look, we have spoken to the Home Office and we are convinced that you can deal with these people in a safe space. We will provide the space. You turn up to this space, be it a church venue, be it a social club, whatever. It will be a safe space. You will engage with these Home Office Windrush representatives, and then you will take it from there.
Yes, and that's why I was pleased from about May 2018 really to work with you on that. And as you said, Church of God of Prophecy on RAFA as a social action agency, and the fact that you were able to respond to providing information, advice and guidance and support to the congregations on a Sunday after their meeting. So the willingness to meet people where they are at the best time to meet them, both from an institution and a community perspective, was really important. So obviously there's still some work to be done, because across communities, and I know particularly speaking about the African Caribbean communities, there are other institutions and groupings and clusters of interested parties that do need to get involved. And a good example, of course, was last year, the African Caribbean Cultural Centre in North London, who not only hosted the series of status meetings, but also the compensation meeting that had the minister and senior Home Office officials. And I think at least 100 people were able to, in that week, get the information and have their voices heard with senior people. So I think much more of that as well, led by the outreach team, would certainly provide that trust, confidence and assurance that are needed to dismantle the barriers, because it's in all our interests, of course.
Yeah. I'd echo everything you said in this, because it's a ongoing process. The issue which people have faced has been over generations.
Yeah.
That kind of position people find themselves in is not remedied overnight. It's work.
Yeah.
People have been in these situations for decades. To assume one meeting, one Zoom meeting, one physical meeting will do it will not work. It has to be on a continual basis, because the department has to prove to people it is good at its word. It is demonstrating its commitment. And as I said, I've been doing this since April 2018. If it wasn't for the restrictions imposed by the COVID pandemic, we've been continually doing this up to today. We go to venues and we revisit venues, because yes, I can be in Lewisham one weekend. But if I'm only there once, some people might not be able to see me then.
Of course.
If I can come back again 2 months later, maybe afford the opportunity. And the basis of this is the fact that once we make our initial engagement, it has to be an engagement which is positive, because people have to feel confident in order to generate subsequent confidence. You know as well as I do, Rudy, if people want to get confidence, and if people want to take people's at their word, they are far more likely to trust their peers. So if somebody meets me and they think, well, this chap's been okay, he's been fairly decent, and then the person then goes and talks to somebody else, that person is far more likely then to be willing to speak to us, because they had a personal testimony of somebody who's had that interaction.
Yeah.
That's why when I said at the start about our core handlers have to have the right mindset, it's the same mindset which we have to have when we meet people face to face. We have to be able to meet people and talk to people as human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. We're back to that compassion and humanity. I mean,
that underpins us. And to be honest, I'll tell you this, maybe I shouldn't, but I said to people when we were preparing for these events, I've said to people, yes, you might know X, Y, and Z, that's great. But what I need to be assured of is your mindset. You have to have the right attitude. If you don't have the right attitude, I don't want you to come. Simply because if you're not in the right attitude, you've had a bad day or whatever, and you take that attitude to somebody who's fearful, to somebody who's scared, you will make a really bad impression and you will put that person off. And not only that, it will be a negative effect that person will then cascade that to other people.
Yeah, and as you say that, absolutely, David. As you say that, because we've only got a few moments left now before we finish, is that what would be your advice for an undocumented, fearful person? You know, what's the primary thing for?
And it's making the contact, having the courage to make the contact. I mean, I've said it so many times in terms of there's no enforcement action and that, but I'm just a voice on the call. People don't know me.
Yeah.
I would say is speak to other people, maybe have had interactions with Home Office, gain confidence from that. Make the call to the Home Office. It's a free call. You can just test us out.
Yeah, and I guess they can go through their own trusted stakeholders.
Yes,
as well, because one of the challenges all the time in delivering this kind of information, we always say, is that the means of communication may be different, but the needs are the same. So again, if we can get the undocumented to have confidence in people who they trust.
Yes.
And that's why I think the engagement with the trusted individuals and organizations is essential, because at least the undocumented can make first contact with them, and then the trusted stakeholders, etc., and those in community leaders, you know, and just family members can then make the contact with the Home Office. So that's acceptable as well, of course, that somebody can ring on behalf of somebody. So somebody else can make the call on behalf of somebody.
Yes. At some stage, that person will then, because that person can actually act as a representative
of
give them permission to do that, and that person can act as their representative.
All right, so that's an important. So could you go into a bit more detail on that, because we haven't really touched on that. So
Yeah.
a representative, an advocate on behalf of somebody.
Yes, because lots of people, lots of people are elderly.
Yes.
So the Empire Windrush docked 70 odd years ago, 72 years ago.
Yeah. And of course, there is a generational impact.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes. So some people are elderly, and some people just aren't confident. So providing some people can provide that letter of authority, say I nominate Peter to represent me.
Yes.
Can then take on board and help pursue the application for that person.
Excellent.
Recognize that people aren't always able to do these things, so we have to provide that support, and that's what we will do.
Excellent.
And the reason why I say that, even if I keep coming back to the same point, if you're not sure, make the contact. If you're not confident, speak to somebody else and then make the contact, because if people don't, their situations don't change.
Yeah.
They are the ones who will still subject to not being able to access services, not being able to get employment. Their situations still remain the same, and that is a great tragedy. Please don't listen to everything you hear on the media. Get the facts, speak to us, and then on that basis, make your informed decision, because it's only on that basis can you affect your situation.
Right.
I always urge everybody, get the facts and then make a decision with trusted people as to what you want to do. But if nothing happens, if people don't do anything, their situations remain the same. And that's fundamentally what I do not want. None of us wants that. We want people to be made whole and to be restored and given the dignity they had when they first came across. They came to here help rebuild the country. They were doing the jobs, they were doing the work.
Of course.
The British Empire.
Right. Okay. So before we end, I'd like you just to give the number and the website again.
Okay. Let me get that detail, because I always, I don't want to read the numbers out incorrectly. Yeah. Free phone helpline number is 0800 678 1925. The website is all lowercase gov.uk/Windrush help team. That's all one word. If you access that site, you'll be able to see all the information and literature about Windrush and the support it provides, as well as the compensation scheme. Or if you want to speak to us on the call center side, ring that number and people will be happy to speak to you.
Great.
Please take the time to make the contact.
Thank you very much. And thank you, David, for joining us on Get the Facts, and see you again soon.
Thank you very much, Rudy. Thanks for having me. Take care, mate. Thank you.
Bye.